Hey everybody, welcome back to 90 Degree Angler, where fishing is always right. We are not out on the water today like normal for our videos. We're going to be doing a video today on how to set up your lead core reel for fishing the Flycore method. If you've watched my other videos on the Flycore, you've seen that I will splice, or you've heard me talk about splicing some braid into the actual lead core itself. So that when you're stripping the line, the braid is going across the eyelets rather than the lead core, so that it really extends the length of time that you're able to use your setups without having to retie. By doing this, I've actually gone almost a year and a half without having to set up a new reel, and I actually had the braid break rather than the lead core on the last time I was out. So now I'm going to have to retie one. So I'm going to show you everything we do, how to splice the braid in. I'm going to show you how to tie the leader on there and all the little tricks I've learned to get this set up. You're going to need your lead core. So I have 15-pound Suffix lead core here. We've got our leader, which is, I'm going to be using a 14-pound FC Sniper. We've got our actual Power Pro braid, which I've got 20 pounds here. You're going to need a sharp pair of scissors that can cut the braid. You're going to need a reel, obviously. The reel that we're going to be using is the Abu Garcia 6500 C3. This actual reel, it's got the level wind, and it will hold a full 10 colors plus the braid backing. So it's a perfect reel for using this method. You're going to need a lighter, and you're going to need, most importantly, a needle. Now this might be the hardest part, is how you're going to find a needle that you can get down the center of your lead core and still be able to get the actual braid through the eye of the needle. So I may need to enlist my wife for helping with that part, but I'll show you all that when we come to it. The first step I already did. You're going to want to put a nice braid backing on your reel. So I've got some 30-pound Power Pro already tied on there. And then we're going to be attaching the first color of the lead to that. And then we're going to be splicing our colors, our braid into specific colors, and I'll show you how we do all that. But let's get ready to get started. Alright, might be a little difficult to see because we've got our black background and we got our green braid here. But the first step to attaching the braid to the lead core is going to be to remove a few inches of the lead. So all you got to do is find the end of the lead in there, grab the actual cord itself, and you're going to pull it down like so. So that is about 3-4 inches. You'll break that lead off. It's nice and easy. And then when you let go, it's going to pop itself back out. So you can see that the lead comes to about here, and then we've got all this empty space over here. So next thing you want to do is take care of any frays. Okay, so you're going to take some really sharp scissors and just snip the end of that off. And your next step will be to grab your needle and very carefully work that needle down into the center where you just removed the lead. Now you want to be very careful with this. Okay, so now you can see I've got the needle inside, and we're just going to cauterize the end a little bit here. Just a quick tap with the lighter, and that burns this into a nice solid piece that's not going to keep fraying on you, and it's going to make it a lot easier when you're threading stuff in and out of the actual lead core sheath. Okay, so that's step 2. All right, the next step is you're going to go back down here where your actual lead stops, and we're going to just tie a simple overhand knot, and we're going to leave that very loose. So you want the knot on the braid for right now, as you can see. And we've got all this loose end over here, okay? Okay, so now we're going to have to get our needle, and we're going to have to thread the braid into the eye of the needle. The braid itself is not rigid enough to thread down through the lead core sheath without the needle to guide it. So this is going to take me a little while to get this done because this is probably the hardest part. So we'll come back to this in just a second after I get that done. Okay, so I got a piece of white paper so that it's a little easier to see, but now you can see that the braid is through the actual needle. So I don't know, there's no way I could have possibly done that, but my wife helped me out with it. So, all right, next step, we're gonna keep this knot nice and loose. We're gonna take the needle and thread it into the top of the lead core, right through that little section that we cauterized. It's hard to do this with the cameras in my face here, so let's see if we can get this done. The hardest part about doing this is you have a tendency to want to, shove that needle down in there, but if you pull on this lead core, you're actually constricting it. So you want to kind of use like almost like an inchworm method, where you just kind of slowly, I just pulled it out. Okay. So once we have our needle inside the lead core sheath, what we're going to do is very carefully work that needle down without having the needle punch out the side of the lead core itself. It's very difficult to do. You have to be very careful because the lead wants to work against you and tighten itself up. So you just got to push really carefully. You want to keep the lead core sheath as straight as possible so you're not pushing out the side. And almost like inchworm it up the needle. When you get to the end, you might have to pull a little hard to get it over the eye of the needle there. Alright, we're getting down. I poked out a little bit. Alright, when it pokes out a little bit, just work it back down. So inch it up a little bit, pull it on, inch it up a little bit, stretch it off. All right. Normally I like to go a little bit further than that into the lead core, but for right now we're just going to make that work. So you will pop the needle out the side of the lead core sheath and pull it all the way through. And then we're going to pull our needle off. Okay, so now you can see I've got the lead coming through. I'm going to pinch my knot here. I don't want to move my knot down yet. And I'm going to pull the lead, pull the braid so that it goes just back inside, just like that. Okay, so just realized the front facing camera wasn't on and all I got everything on was up there, so I hope that it came out. I will repeat this process on the next step, but once you get the braid inside the lead core, now we're going to take our knot and work our knot down over where the braid is inside the lead core sheath. So that's a pretty simple process. Just kind of work the knot slowly down. Keep going. You want to make sure that the braid is outside of that knot. So I know that my braid is all the way over here. And now my knot is all the way down towards the end. So you see how close that knot is? And just before I tighten it up, we're going to get it a little wet. Like any knots you make. And then you're just going to pull that nice and tight right there, okay? So that is your connection right there, right? All it is a simple overhand knot with the braid on the inside of the sheath of the lead core. The harder you pull on this, the tighter that the lead core, that the sheath of the braid pulls down on the knot, and it prevents it from slipping out. I'm pulling pretty hard right now, and you can see that that's not coming out. So as long as you have your drag set right, that's never going to come out. Some people say that you should put a little drop of super glue on the knot to hold everything in place. I highly recommend that you do not do that. The super glue has no give whatsoever. It actually makes the lead core more brittle and more easily will snap on you. So I can promise you, this is gonna hold. It doesn't seem like it will, but it's gonna hold. So now all we're gonna do is repeat this process over and over and over again all the way up the line, okay? So let's go ahead and crank our first colors onto the reel here. The good thing about the lead core, because you're not casting it out, it doesn't have to be super tight and super tightly wound like most reels have to be, or super packed down. So what we're gonna do is just as you can see, I kind of use the box. I keep it in the box, and then I just twist the first color on. So we know the red is going to be 5 feet. The blue is going to be 5 feet. Okay, and then you can see the blue kind of turns into the brown. So let's take it back out here. So where the blue meets the brown. And as hard as this is to do for someone who's just bought this expensive lead core, we're gonna cut it right there. All right, the reason we're cutting it there is because I want my braid to be at 30 feet and at 40 feet when my lead core is in the water. So, if we're doing 10 colors, that's 50 feet. So the red would have been 45, the blue would have been 40, and so now we're gonna splice some more braid into this section right here. All right, we're gonna do the same thing we did before. We're gonna peel out a good section of the lead, toss it off to the side, let that retake its shape. We're gonna stick the needle down the center. And we're just gonna give it a real quick whoop. I don't know if you can see that, but it makes a nice little section there for us, okay? And then we're gonna take our braid, and if I can make this work, you can see this is the hardest part. The trouble with the needles is you need a needle with a thin enough gauge that you can get it down into the lead core, but usually that means they have tiny, tiny eyes on them, so it makes it really hard to get your actual braid in there. Okay, somehow I've miraculously managed to get the braid in the needle myself here. So again, same method that we did before. You're gonna go down here, and make sure I have a little bit of extra room here. You're gonna tie a simple overhand knot where the lead is still inside the lead core. Overhand knot. We're gonna take our needle, and we're gonna get it down the middle. I've generally found that straight up and down is the easiest way to do this, just because of the gravity and the way it works. And again, you want to just inch it up little by little, little by little, trying not to let that needle poke out. All right, once it gets up to the top here, you're gonna have to like work that over the eyelet, so pull it up. Now, see, we busted out again, so that is the hardest part. Once you cross that, that's not going to want to back down very easily to get that needle back inside the sheath. As you guys can see, it's very difficult. The needle keeps popping out, which makes it harder and harder and harder, right? But ideally you want this braid, you know, as close down here to where the lead comes out as possible. The more you can put in there, the better it's going to be. This is the tedious part, and the reason why you don't want to have to keep doing this over and over and over again, because it's just a pain in the butt. So we're gonna pause here while I work this down, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so we've got a good amount of that in there. Again, you can see from right there all the way to over where the needle is. So we've got a good amount of the braid through the sheath. So we'll pop that needle through. Pull it out, right? You want to pinch off your knot here so you don't accidentally tighten that knot down. The easiest mistake to make is to forget to tie this knot first, because then you can't do it afterwards and you've got to redo everything. So I don't know why this knot's twisting up on me too, but it is. So we'll hold the knot and then we'll pull the braid until it just pops back inside the lead core sheath. And now we're going to work our knot down. I don't know what's going on with this knot. It's almost like my line's twisted, but that's not actually possible with lead core. So there we go. So push our knot through. Alright, so like before, the lead stopping here, the braid is about to there. Ideally, if you can get the braid all the way to the lead, you're golden. Sometimes it just doesn't want to thread down that far. But as long as you're about an inch, inch and a half past the knot, you should have enough in there so that it doesn't slip out. Alright, and this is just my personal preference. I like that knot as close to the end as possible. Right, we got our little knot. We're going to give it some moisture here. And then we're going to pull it tight. Alright, and again, we can pull that pretty hard and it's not coming out. Okay, our next step is to put enough braid on the reel so that the braid will go all the way over the length of the rod, so that the braid is stripping across the eyelets. And then I usually use double the length of the rod so that I can have a few wraps on the reel. I can have enough braid going across the eyelets, and then braid going out towards where the next color, which is yellow, is going to be in the water. Because again, the lead core sinks at 5 feet per color once the color is in the water. Okay, so we're going to do yellow next. We'll do 2 more colors and repeat the process. And we'll get that spooled up here in just a second. Okay, so one more time, we're going to go through this again. Peel back the braid. Get your wide gauge needle in there. Singe up the end just a little bit. I found that 20-pound braid makes an amazing difference in being able to thread it into the needle. This time I'm not going to forget to tie my knot down here. Okay. We're going to get our needle in the hole we made with the cigarette lighter. Okay, that's a good one. Alright, holding the knot. I'm going to pull that braid. Back inside. All right, so now we've got our braid at 50, our braid at 40, our braid at 30. All right, our next step is just to crank the rest of the line on and tie our leader, and then we'll be done. All right, once we get back to the white and the red, that's our full 10 colors. And the red will start our new spool. The next spool we go to spool up. So now you can see that we have full 10 colors spooled up on this reel. And we're gonna go and tie our leader now. Okay guys, for the leader, what I've got here is some 14-pound Sunline Sniper. I generally do 15, but I'm gonna try 14 because I have it handy and I don't think it's gonna make too much difference. And I'm a really big fan of the Sunline. So we're gonna do the same thing we did with the rest of the stuff. We're gonna pull out about 5 to 6 inches of the lead. Pop, let it go. So now we got our lead up to here and our loosey-goosey point, okay? This part's probably even more important on this section than the others, but we're gonna go in, get our big gauge needle down the middle here. Not sure why that one was being so difficult. Singe up the end as always. Okay. Alright, remember, most important thing not to forget is to tie your knot first. I usually try to tie it where the actual lead is because it won't accidentally tighten up on you. The lead will hold it in place. Alright, so you can't do the needle trick with the fluorocarbon. The fluorocarbon is too thick. You won't be able to double it over and pull it down with the needle. So the fluorocarbon has enough rigidity that you can feed it down by itself, okay? It's gonna wanna poke out all the time. So you're gonna wanna do my same trick, nice and easy, and use that inchworm method. See, it's already trying to poke out, so. Pinch and pull, right? Pinch it and pull it. Pinch here, push, release. You're pinching at the top, pinching at the top, pushing up a little bit, pinching here and releasing. Pinching at the top, pushing and releasing. So I'm pinching at the top, pushing up, pinching at the bottom, and then releasing. I'm telling you that method is going to be much easier than anything else you do. Poked out a little bit, so just back it up. Okay. This is the muscle memory right here that's going to take a long time to learn. Once you get it, this part makes it easy. See how far we've already thread that 14-pound Sunline in there? We're almost all the way to the knot. So I'm pretty good where I am, but if I can get it further, I'm going to try. And I did. Okay. So now we've got that. You can see this is where my line is. So I've got the leader all the way in there. So now we just have to work the knot down without pulling the leader out. Okay. You do not want to accidentally pull that leader back through. Alright, so we got it right down near the end here. I want to get it as close as I can. Working that knot all the way down there. Oops, not that far. Bam. Tighten her up. Alright, and again, the reason this works is because this works like the old paper finger trap, right? As it squeezes this way, it's loose, but when it pulls this way, it pulls tight. So as the fish is pulling and you're pulling, that knot is getting tighter and tighter around that actual leader, and that leader will not slip out. I have never once had this knot fail when I was fishing with the Flycore method. So that's kind of how we go about putting the splices of the braid together and tying the leader up. So if you're able to follow those steps, and again, I hope this came out decent. I have no idea. We're gonna have to edit it and see what it looks like. But if you guys found this helpful, just go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me right there. I'll link a couple of other videos up here and here where you can see some of the fish that I've caught using this Flycore method and this specific reel setup that we have here. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop me a comment. I try to answer all the comments. I appreciate your guys liking and subscribing. Hopefully this was helpful for you. We'll see you on the next one, which will be out on the water. Have a good night.